afternoon and welcome to the Lit Gals, season 2, episode 2. We got the twos going on today here in the month of September. And Anna, there's 2 of us today.
I know. I thought that's where you were going with this whole 2 thing.
No, it wasn't, but it is fitting.
Yeah.
Our other lit gal, April, couldn't join us today, so you get Martie and Anna, a duo here for season 2, episode 2 of the Lit Gals. So I'm Martie Hoofer. I'm a digital content manager for Keep Indiana Learning, an avid reader, and a former 7th grade reading and writing teacher. So middle grade, young adult lit is my jam. As I sit here and look at the books in front of me, they all fall into those categories, middle grade or young adult literature. So Anna, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Great. Thank you, Martie. It's so good for us to be together again. My name is Anna Cook. I am a professional literacy specialist with Collaborative Educators, and I'm from Indianapolis, but right now I am in lovely, sunny Southern Indiana, working with a school this week and just really doing some fabulous things. My heart is all literacy, but I was a teacher in elementary. I was also a principal and then also coordinator of curriculum and instruction for over 20 years. But my love is definitely elementary, but we'll go up to 8th grade, Martie. I know that you'll do higher, but my limit is 8th, probably.
Got it. So today we're going to talk about mentor text. And Anna, I know sometimes people hear that and they think, ooh, and they feel like there's a lot of rules and things around it. I think you and I have a different outlook on mentor text. I know I was intimidated by them early in my career, but then I realized, man, there's a lot of power in other people's writing. So give us your take on mentor text and some thoughts you have.
It's so funny that you should mention that, Martie. I am now seeing across the state more and more teachers saying, can you talk to us about mentor text, or what's mentor text? And I'm confused. When would I use that, etc. And I agree with you. A lot of people are very intimidated just by the title of mentor text. And the first thing in their mind is, oh my gosh, what if I pick the wrong one, right? I'll ruin somebody for life.
Right.
Not the case at all. And it's been very enlightening to me. We started using mentor text just with writing. And now we're doing mentor text more and more to piggyback on that mini lesson that we taught, because let's face it, Martie, even since this, pandemic, our students haven't been able to experience, right, different types of text.
Yeah.
And so when we sit there and talk about a personal narrative or a persuasive piece, or, how do we, see persuasion in our story or whatever, they don't know what that looks like. What do you mean? And we can sit there in front of our wonderful anchor chart or in front of the whiteboard and give them example after example. But I really feel like it's solidified when we can read a mentor text and say, this book is going to be chock full of persuasion. And after I get done reading it, let's talk about all the things that were persuasive, right?
Absolutely.
So I just find that it's a lovely, lovely piece after that mini lesson, or if we're going to really hone in on a writing piece and everything, they need to see multiple types of that in action, not just a couple of things, on our board.
Yes. And I think that's key. I think two things you said there stood out to me. One, I think about all the times that I would present my mini lesson on punctuation, punctuating dialogue. I wish I had $1 for every time I talked about punctuating dialogue, because in a personal narrative, critical skill that you have to have. And so if, mini lesson, go write. And then they would come up to my desk for a writing conference and I'd be like, something doesn't seem quite right about this sentence. And they'd look at it and like, looks okay to me. And I'm like, well, why don't you go get that mentor text we just looked at? And then I'd have them bring it over because I always gave them individual copies so that they I would have them.
Great idea.
Different days, mark up different things. And I'd be like, okay, let's look at this paragraph. We always numbered our paragraphs, always, just so we could refer back to them easily. And I would say, okay, let's look at this paragraph right here. What do you notice about what Ralph Fletcher did versus what you did? And, so, Ralph Fletcher, actually, he's going to be a book I talk about. He has books, he has videos, he has websites. Ralph Fletcher clearly knows more about the English language than I do, according to my 7th graders. So, he would carry more weight because he has this published piece of writing. So they can see it in his work. So yes, I agree that seeing it in action is critical. The other thing I didn't do this as often, but I liked it when I did it, was just lay the mentor text out there and we would read it. And then we'd talk about, what do you notice about it? And let them authentically start recognizing, oh, there's a lot of, the chickens in Clack, Clack, Moo. They're really talking hard to Farmer Brown. They really are trying to get his point across. They start to see the persuasion.
Right.
And so them pulling it out themselves, also it's in action and it becomes more authentic. And
I love that. I really, I appreciate, Martie, so much you talking about the conferring. Because that's another thing when you had said, okay, let's pull out this book that, I read, or this chapter that I read that was chock full of persuasive dialogue. How is this similar or different than yours? I love that because once again, it's authentic. Although we need that anchor chart, although we need those examples that we put up on the board, that's not authentic.
No. And I think students, right, they see that. I mean, they know that anchor chart's important, but they also know that's school.
Right.
This is real. This is like go to the bookstore and get. Where that anchor chart, that's just Mrs. Hoofer writing on a big piece of paper.
Yes. So I want to talking about yours, and this is, what I mean, what you got, etc. That was another question that a lot of teachers have asked me, and that is, well, how do you find a mentor text? And they don't believe me when I say that I literally Google mentor text for opinion and persuasion.
Yes.
Or a mentor text for sensory details. I literally type that in.
Yes.
And I am absolutely stunned by all of the titles that pull up. But I wanted to also bring up, because I know that you're going to talk about the book that you've got, the Ralph Fletcher one, but I also wanted to talk about utilizing that media specialist. They love doing that.
Yes.
They love it. Yes. And so what one of my teachers, my grade levels, is going to do, and that is they are going to try to be a month ahead of the plan, if you will. And they are going to ask their media specialist, can you please find us mentor texts on, opinion or sensory details or blah, blah. And she will have those mentor texts for them before they start the unit the next month.
Yes, that is brilliant, because it doesn't all have to live in your head.
No.
I mean, I read a lot, and I would not claim to know to say, oh, I could find a mentor text about this. Anna, I find them the same way you did.
Yeah.
I Google them. I ask other teachers, media specialists. I worked with a fantastic one. I was so blessed. And yes, she would absolutely do that. But asking other teachers is a great way to find new ones.
Right. Well, and a case in point, I was doing a great big lesson on inferences, and the media specialist picked Click, Clack, Moo, and I thought, oh, Click, Clack, Moo. I kind of snubbed my nose at it. So, but I was in a pinch, and I said, sure, give me that one. And as I started reading it, I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, this is a prize.
Yeah.
It's a gem for inferencing. Who would have thought?
Right. And actually, so this is kind of a side note, and this may be one of our show topics in a few months. I can't quite remember, but picture books. They are amazing mentor text because they're short. You can read the whole thing. Middle school kids still love pictures. Don't let them tell you otherwise. So pick, and because there are so many nonfiction picture books now, picture books are great. I didn't think to bring any to talk about them as mentor text, but I use them a lot as well.
And that's all I've got today.
Well, perfect. Well, why don't you go and talk about your picture books, and then I'll talk about what I brought.
Okay. So I use picture books a lot. And as if you can notice, I've got just Post-it notes. And I share my books, but most importantly, I put my Post-it notes either, right inside or whatever, and I ask them to please leave them there, because it's a good, reference for me.
Right.
So and then also, Martie, you said that you were going to attach some of the books that I'm going to talk about. So I started thinking about the writing and our priority standards in writing. And if you really think about it, we've always got a priority standard for opinion and persuasion, a personal narrative, or, writing an informational piece, right? And so that's what I thought that I would do today. So for that writing informational pieces, I love Salsa stories. Because not only does it tell a story about a family, but then more importantly, in the back, it shows recipes that the family made. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it just is chock full of wonderful examples of an informational piece. And then also for a personal narrative, I love Vera Williams. She wrote two or three. I think it's three. And this one is called A Chair for My Mother. But this is about a child who lives with her mom and her grandma. And they've written just some lovely books about A Chair for My Mother, and then just two others that just are fabulous about their own personal lives. And then another one that I absolutely love, I wish I could focus in on this because I love the picture. I will never, not ever eat a tomato.
Yep.
And this is great for that opinion piece. Because let's face it, students have opinions, but they need to back it up. And so this is a great one for that. And then also, I realized that this was, have you seen this, Martie?
I have seen it. I don't know that I've read it, but I have seen that cover.
The Jolly Pocket Postman. This is for the earlier grades, K1, 2, about letter writing. And every single page has an envelope and a letter inside. And so this book is just chock full of letters, examples of letters that the students can go from.
Love that.
So I did this when I taught first grade, and I still have it today. I love that book.
Yeah.
So you are absolutely right, though, about using the picture books, especially for middle school and even high school.
Oh, yeah.
They love them.
Totally. Totally. Well, the books I brought to share, the mentor text I brought. Okay, one, I don't own this book. I had to go Google it, and I just printed off the cover. But this was, it's called Text and Lessons for Content Area Reading. It's by Harvey Daniels and Nancy Steinke. This book, so obviously this is a printout of the cover, but I'm such a visual person that I need to see covers, but it's a large yellow book, but it's filled with articles from the New York Times, Rolling Stone, Washington Post, Car and Driver, Chicago Tribune. And I use these as mentor text, and I would also use them for research. So I would do some of the research for my students, say, here's your packet of info, kind of like standardized tests do.
Right.
And then you have to write out of the information I've given you. They've already done the work because they've pulled the units together. They've found the articles. I'm just giving them to the kids, but they're still mentor texts.
Right.
Obviously, the Washington Post and the New York Times are doing things the way I need modeled for my writers.
Absolutely. And I thank you very much, Martie, for pointing that out. It doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be a chapter book. It doesn't have to be it can be an article.
Well, okay. So this book, Ralph Fletcher's Marshfield Dreams, full disclosure, it's not a big book. I've never read anything but the last chapter because it was absolutely my favorite mentor text ever. And when I would ask students about it, we always read this the beginning of the year because we wrote personal narratives first 9 weeks, which I thought was great. It gave me a way to get to know my kids. But they would talk about this mentor text in May. I mean, it had a huge impression on them because it's about a group of middle school boys who are friends, and one of them is moving away. And so it's so impactful to them that it stands out. So it's called Funeral. And when you print it, like type it out, it's a front and a back of a piece of paper. So they can easily fold it up, keep it in the writer's notebook.
Yes.
And so it was short. We could read it in one class period. But it was my favorite mentor text ever. It's just an essay out of Ralph Fletcher's book that I found by Googling.
I'm going to put you on the spot. How did you find out about that?
I Googled.
Okay. There you go.
I Googled it.
There you go.
Needed a personal narrative mentor text.
Love it.
Ralph showed up.
Love it.
Yes. Now, for full disclosure, I would also, these just happen to be sitting in my office today. Both of these are books that I did read alouds with, which I know we've done a show about, but I would use these as mentor texts. I would say, hey, do you remember when Nick Stone did XYZ? Because we'd shared the text together. I feel like any shared text can become a mentor text.
I agree. And I love using, reusing, because it's then familiar for our students, and you know what I mean? There's something with familiarity, then they grasp a hold of what we're trying to show them.
Well, I think because they're not getting lost in the plot and the story and the details. Now we can just look at, because I know what happens. Now I can just look at it for this, whatever this is. Yeah. I agree. So Anna, we're 20 minutes in. It's now time. Not that the other segments aren't my favorites, but my favorite segment, but for you, it's always a little different. Normally we ask, what are you reading now? But Anna, we've learned we don't get to ask you, what are you reading?
No.
So I'm going to ask you, are you reading or listening to
Okay.
something?
I know I made a full disclaimer that I was going to do nothing but listen the whole entire summer and everything, but I've got to tell you something. I was very, very fortunate to be able to go to Cape Cod and Newport, and it was just really wonderful. And, talking about friends and suggestions, a friend of mine, when she found out that I had gone to Newport, she said, "Oh, have you read the novel, The Lost Summers of Newport?" And I thought, oh gosh, no, I haven't. And I am reading that right now. And oh, Martie, it is so lovely because it gives you a picture in your mind every single page. And since I just was there, you know what I mean? Then it really is, it's nice. And it makes me feel like I'm back there.
Yes.
So yes, that's what I'm reading right now. And I'm just really savoring every chapter because summer's almost finished this year.
Yeah. It is. So Anna, one more time, what was that title?
The Lost Summers of Newport.
Got it. Well, I've been to Newport, and so I need to read that book. So I'm jotting it down. If you're listening, watching later, it'll be in the show notes also. So
okay, great. Thank you, Martie. I think that you'll like it.
Okay. Well, what I'm reading right now is a young adult book. It's not middle grade. This is truly young adult. This is probably not something I would even put in my middle school classroom. I'll be quite honest with you. It is called The Silence That Binds Us. A little very reflective cover there. The Silence That Binds Us by Johanna Ho. It does talk about suicide. So let me just put that out there. I tend to shy away from books that have suicide as a topic that hits a little too close to home for me. But for some reason, I decided I was going to try this one. Okay. And I'm glad I have. I'm not quite halfway yet. Beautiful writing, very realistic. High schoolers would love this book. Asian American family living San Francisco area. Okay. And obviously suicide is a part of the story, but then how does the family pick up the pieces and where do they go? And how does sister process all that's happened? And, it's heavy, but it's real. And the writing is beautiful. I love it when I get adult style writing in a young adult book because it's a great way to give great writing to kids. And there's some sentences I've marked in here that I'll be sharing because they're just beautifully written sentences.
So that's what all those Post-it notes are for?
Yes. So, so all my Post-it notes are sentences I liked or chapters that were particularly meaningful because when I post my books after I read them, I share them on my personal Twitter and my Instagram page. And so then below the main post, I share a quote or two from the book. So I just have to keep track of the quote as I go with my little Post-it notes.
I love that. Yeah. You really do utilize 100% of the books that you read, Martie.
Yeah.
You really are a great role model for that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, Anna, we are out of time. The time always goes so fast. Thank you, viewers.
It does, always.
Always. Thank you for being a part of the Lit Gals. Feel free to tweet us, use the hashtag the Lit Gals. We would love to hear what you're reading. Our next show is October 12th. Summer will truly be gone by the time October 12th gets here. Pumpkins in full force. And so we will see you next month. Thank you for being a part of our show.
Thank you, guys.